For your first steps in Python, I have prepared a small project. No, I will not start with the usual hello world. Honestly, I hope you are a little beyond that. It's a small project you can follow step by step. Take your time, you don't need to do this in one go. Always run the code at every step and observe how the program evolves. Here's the idea behind the project. I want to manage my shopping list. When I add a new item to the list, I want to be able to choose from a list of categories, like fruit, meat, fish, etc. I want to be able to save the list to a file and retrieve it, sort the list by category, remove items, and change quantities. To start with the project, you will just create some variables. Maybe you will not even use all of them, but this step is just to understand the concept. In Python, there are three basic types of variables. Numbers, like 3, 65, or 7.23. Strings, that is, sequences of characters enclosed in single or double quotes. Boolean, a special value that can be either true or false. Remember, the first letter is uppercase. Start coding your project by declaring some variables and assigning their initial value, then execute the code. It works. See how the values of your variables are printed. In the next step, you will define the set of possible categories to choose from. You will use a special type of variable, the list. A list can contain an arbitrary number of values, like numbers, strings, and even other lists. Note how the function print can visually display any kind of data, including the list. Now, since these data are no longer needed for the program, you can delete the print lines so the program output will be more clear. Let me introduce now a new concept, the functions. The program will display a main menu allowing the user to make a choice. This menu is displayed many times, and it would be awkward to type or even copy and paste the same exact code every time. Functions are very useful in this situation. You can define a piece of code inside a function and call the function as many times as you like simply by its name. Add the following code immediately after the variable declaration, then execute the program. The program now displays the menu and terminates. To collect the option you will select, use the function input, which stores the value you type in a variable. Add this line after the last print and remember to indent it correctly. As you can see, now the program stops and waits for your input. Amazing, right? But nothing happens after you have entered a number. You must return the value to the main program, and for now, just print it. Change the code as shown below. Notice that since the function input returns a string, you must convert it to an integer before returning its value. Let me now introduce another new concept. Loops. Loops repeatedly execute a block of code while their condition remains true. Something inside the loop must break the condition, or the loop will run forever. In your project, every time the program has nothing better to do, it will display the main menu. Remember you defined the variable finish with a default value of false? Change the code in the main block as shown. What's happening? The program runs forever, or at least until we enter an invalid value, like a string. You must add the code to check the value of the selected option, and if it equals 3, you will set the value of finish to true. This will break the loop condition and the program will end. Please note that you would normally use break to exit a loop, but for our demonstrative purposes, this is just fine. Run the program and see what happens when you insert the value 3. Also check what happens if you insert any other number, or even some text. Since this is an introduction to the basic structures, I'm skipping all the checks on the validity of the input, but in a real program, you must check every possible condition that may cause the program to behave incorrectly or crash. Now, change the program to print a warning if you input a number that is not in the menu. Now that you have seen the main concept, you can add the rest of the functionalities to the program. Start with option number 1 and add an item to the shopping list. First, you will need a variable that will contain the items. For this, declare an empty list. Then, create a new function to manage the activity, and finally add the code to call this function when you select option 1. If you run the program now, it will ask you to input the values for name and quantity. You still need to request a valid category. To achieve this, you must understand the concept of looping through iterables. An iterable is a kind of data you can walk through using a loop. Besides, the elements of an iterable can be enumerated. The simplest example of iterable is the list that you already know. Lists automatically have an index, with the first element having index equals 0. With the index, you can directly access every element of the list. In this section, you will add the code to print the list of categories with their indexes and request to insert the index of your desired one. Here is where you walk through the categories and print them along with their index, and here you collect the user input. Note how it is converted to integer on the fly. If you type a value that is not an index of your list, including text, you will cause a runtime error. For simplicity, for now you are not making a bomb-proof user interface. Once you have collected the information that makes an element of your shopping list, you must add them to the Python list. To do this, you will use a dictionary. A dictionary is a collection of key value pairs, where each key is unique and is used to access its corresponding value. It is defined using curly braces, with keys and values separated by a colon, like in the example. With the example in mind, add the code to append an item to the shopping list. Then run the program. Hey, nothing happened. This is because you did not define what to do with the data you have collected. Time to write the code for option 2. As before, you could write a function to display the list, but since it's just a handful of lines, you can just add it in the main loop. See here? The list is displayed correctly. Now run the program again and select option 2 before anything else. What happened to the items we just added to the list? Gone. The memory used by our program is released when the program exits, so in the current state, it's not very useful. There are very efficient ways to implement the so-called data persistence. These include using libraries like Pandas or DuckDB, which allow the management of data in various formats, including Excel. In this example, you will keep it very basic and save the data in a comma-separated text file. Start with defining a variable that will contain the name of your text file. Then, add a new function that goes through the shopping list and writes each element in a separate line. Finally, add the code to call the function just before the program terminates. At this point, give it a try. Enter a couple of items and exit. Then use the command type to inspect the content of your text tile. Saving the list is not very useful if you can't read it back into the program. Add the code to read the list at every execution of the program. There's no need to create a function since this is part of the main block and it will be executed every time you run the program. Write the following code before the loop, then give it a try. From here, the possibilities are endless. With this project, you just scratched the surface of what you can achieve with Python and the virtually infinite set of libraries. Do you want to continue with this project? Try on your own. You may add an option to empty the list or remove a single item. Or what about creating a nicer user interface? Do you need help to proceed? Look for the next chapters or join Shed Coders and take part in one of my live sessions.